The Andy Pollin Show.
We got to go after this with everything we got, figuring they're going to come with everything they got.
I'll start off by saying I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630 starts right now.
Well, the transfer portal is a complete mess. There's a quarterback at Penn State whose team is heading into the playoff. They got a game this weekend against SMU, but he can't be on the team because he's got to get in the portal and he's got to get to where he's going, and there's not much anybody can do about it. Does that make any sense to anybody? Penn State with a chance to win the national championship, and their backup quarterback who plays some has to leave? It's crazy. And could we see Michael Penix Jr. when the Falcons come here, not this weekend, but the following weekend? Falcons won last night. Kirk Cousins, for the moment, has his job, but for how long will he have it? That's the question. And we're also waiting on this. I've been checking the schedules. They are still listing the Falcons and the Commanders game for December 29th at 1 o'clock. But I believe by, noon today, we should hear something from the NFL where they would flex the game. I would think it would be a Sunday night game. It's significant in that the Falcons are still very much competing for the division title for the NFC South. They're 7-7. They got a game against the Giants this weekend at home. New York is just an absolute mess. So they would likely be 8-7 coming here, and Washington would be probably 9-6, unless they pull an upset against the Eagles. But they're down players. I mean, Zach Ertz is in concussion protocol. Jeremy Chin is in concussion protocol. They have been now without Austin Eckler for the last couple of games. He's not going to be eligible to play until the Dallas game. So they're really beat up. Noah Brown, who's out for the season with an injury, with an internal injury. So they're down significant offensive players. And Terry McLaurin has been great lately. Daniels has played extremely well. Maybe not his best game this past week, but he's such an accurate passer and really has really proven to be the rookie of the year in the NFL. And that brings us to last night, where the Chicago Bears put up 12 points against the Vikings, and Caleb Williams extended his rookie record streak. I bet most people don't know this, but he has a rookie record streak of 286 straight passes without an interception. But the Bears have been in free fall. They were 4-2 when they came here in late October, and on their way to a win when that idiot safety Stevenson was trying to fire up the crowd, and Daniels threw the Hail Mary pass that Noah Brown caught, and the Bears have not won. They have lost 8 straight games. They have been outscored 53-0 in the first half of their most recent games, past 3 games. And they just, fall behind, and they're playing catch-up. I mean, it was a late touchdown pass from Caleb in this game to Keenan Allen, but the game was over at this point. Bears were 1 for 12 on third down and lost to the Vikings 30-12. And, you look at what Minnesota is doing this year. I know we're all caught up here in what Dan Quinn has done with this team and Adam Peters turning it over and the great job that Jaden Daniels has done, all that. But as much as I'd like to see Quinn win Coach of the Year, I think you have to give it to Kevin O'Connell. He's doing this with a reclamation quarterback. Sam Darnold was left on the side of the road like a dead armadillo, and they brought him into Minnesota, and the thinking was, well, let's use him kind of like Marcus Mariota is being used here. He'll do some mentoring to J.J. McCarthy, and when McCarthy's ready to play, he's going to play. And I saw O'Connell before the season. This was before J.J. McCarthy hurt his knee. And I saw him say to Rich Eisen, no, Darnold is our quarterback. This is not a quarterback competition. Quinn set it up here. It was Mariota and Daniels competing for the job. That wasn't the case in Minnesota. And then it became moot when J.J. McCarthy hurt his knee, had surgery, and was out for the year. So you look at the Vikings and you go, well, okay, they moved on from Kirk Cousins. This is kind of a rebuilding year. Hopefully by next year they'll have McCarthy ready to play, and they'll have moved on from this silly Sam Darnold thing and yada, yada. No, they could easily win the division. They're now tied with Detroit at 12-2, And Detroit has so many injuries right now. I mean, if they can hold it together and somehow make a run in the playoffs, good for them. That would be a miraculous story. But they're a mess right now, injury-wise, and they're coming off a loss to Buffalo. And the Vikings look great. I know Chicago's not a good team, but Darnold was superb last night. And I think if you look at O'Connell, yet another one off the Mike Shanahan tree, the league is full of these guys. I think you got to make him the coach of the year. And after they closed out the Bears last night, 30-12, he came on with Scott Van Pelt on ESPN.
Really, to me, it was about our defense's effort tonight, between giving us some short fields early in the game, and then I think combined 2 of 15 on third downs, fourth downs. It just felt like when we needed to play, those guys made it, and not to our standard offensively, but it's always good to look up and have 30 points on the board when you feel like maybe you didn't play your best game offensively. Lots to work on, lots to improve on, but 12 wins at this point in the season. We love where we're at, but most importantly, Scott, I just love this team.
Yeah.
I love the way they work, and I love the fact that they are excited about what's out in front of them.
I don't know a coach that doesn't love a night like this where you win and yet there's stuff for you to really dig in on when you break down the tape and say, fellas, here's where we can get, incrementally better. And I know for your team, frankly, I don't know where the necessarily those steps are, and you're going to have chances against a really rugged schedule against your division rivals to get better. Where specifically, Kevin, are you hoping to find those inches and yards between now and the playoffs?
Well, you just look at some simple things like penalties. I think we had 10 of them tonight. We had a blocked punt there in the second half to give the defense a short field when we were trying to get some young guys some work on defense. Eventually led to a touchdown there late. For me, Scott, it's just, can we play a total, complete 60-minute effort? And it's hard in the NFL. Teams are well coached. We have to overcome adversity, and this team's learned to win in a lot of different ways, and we'll continue to try to do that. But you mentioned the schedule. Heck of a challenge this week going to Seattle on a short week. Then we'll, come back home to take on Green Bay before going to hopefully Detroit to have a chance to play for something. Yeah, exactly. But I would say this, Scott. We're a tough team. We try to show up and play and compete for 60 minutes every single week. These guys got the right mindset, which I think is important as you're in December trying to really play for something.
The thing I appreciate from afar about your community, and I think I feel this way about every single team in your division, is how closely connected they are. The team and community feel so bonded. And the pregame, I saw CeCe out there with Randy's jersey. JJ scores the touchdown, and what is he screaming into the camera? We're thinking of you. He's our teammate now as well, and obviously we said on Countdown, and I'll say it again, how much we love him. Just if you could give me a sense about the team and the city and sort of what they're sending in terms of vibes to Randy Moss.
Yeah, I know to a lot of people it's debatable, but I think we have the best fans in the NFL. The home environment we have here, Scott, is second to none. And I think, since we initially heard the news about Randy, I know me personally as a former teammate of mine, there's very few people in the NFL world that I respect as much as Randy Moss. I know this organization, his name is up in the rafters here. He's a Hall of Famer. But I think you guys probably felt it. Just that was real. It was authentic. We're behind him 100%. And to have CeCe and Jake Reed here on a moment's notice, I kind of brought that idea up earlier in the week. I just thought it would be an amazing show of support for him to see his two former teammates out there with his jersey. I just think I speak for everybody I know in the Twin Cities and in our organization where Randy Moss means the world to us, and we're behind him 1,000%. And we know he's going to do exactly what he said he's going to do, which is, Moss this cancer and come back better. And when he does, I can't wait to have him right up there, hopefully blowing the horn before the game and getting this place ready to go.
Yeah, it's Vikings coach Kevin O'Connell on with Scott Van Pelt last night, and O'Connell was here in Washington with the Shanahan group, which now populates the NFL, including, of course, his son, Kyle Shanahan. And there's a wild rumor floating around that was, I guess, encouraged last night by Troy Aikman during the broadcast of this Vikings win over the Bears, and it is that Kyle Shanahan could be traded from the 49ers to the Bears. Now, there have been coach trades in the past. John Gruden was traded from the Raiders to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This has happened before. So Aikman said last night, Bears need a coach with the firing of Matt Eberflus after Thanksgiving. He said, in my opinion, I hate to say this because at the end of the day you want a head coach, but I think it's got to be an offensive guy that's going to be able to develop Caleb Williams. And those guys are hard to find. And you're betting on someone you're not certain whether or not can be a head coach. There's been a lot of discussion about, do you give up some picks to see if you can maybe deal for a guy like Kyle Shanahan? I would be all in on that, Aikman said, because he would develop a quarterback, and he's a hell of a coach. But can you pull that off? That's a better question. And who might you hire with no head coaching experience as an offensive guy? You never know the answer to that as to how good they're going to be. It's a great point. Look, he's developed Brock Purdy, who was the last pick of the draft. Don't you think that he might have some success with the first pick of the draft, who appears to be in serious trouble right now? I know he hasn't thrown an interception, but he takes a beating out there. He's not getting rid of the ball fast enough. The 30-12 score, a little bit misleading from last night because they got a garbage time touchdown. I mean, he really has been, through the ringer here. Different offensive coordinators, different head coaches. It's a mess. And, could you deal Kyle Shanahan? It's been done before in the NFL, and it's been done, in the last 25 years? So I think that's in play. It sounds crazy. And would Kyle Shanahan have any say over this? I don't know. But he also may be looking at his situation in San Francisco, and he may say, window's closing. We've been to multiple Super Bowls here. We haven't won any of them. And maybe it's time. Maybe it's time to move on to the next place. And the opportunity to have one of these generational quarterbacks that Caleb Williams could be that good might be enticing to him. Meantime, you got the situation with the Atlanta Falcons. And Kirk Cousins looked pretty good for a while there. Started off slow, got rolling. The team was 6-3 and in control of the division, and then they went on a slide, and they got to 6-6 or 6-7 actually. And last night they got a win, not a very impressive win over a bad team, 15-9 over Las Vegas. And Cousins, in fact, wasn't very good. He was 11 of 17 for just 112 yards. He did throw a touchdown, first one he's thrown in 5 weeks, by the way, and had an interception. And he's thrown more than his share of interceptions this year, especially for a veteran quarterback. He said something here in his opening statement at his news conference last night after the game, which is worth considering.
Glad to find a way to win. It's never easy going on the road and winning this league, and it was great to find a way. Certainly a lot of plays that you look at and you say, hey, we can be better. I can be better. So those conversations will happen certainly, but great to find a way to win. Our defense was phenomenal tonight. Special teams was phenomenal. Run game was strong.
I can be better. Those conversations will happen. Will there be a conversation about a quarterback change? Remember the incredible draft day when they took Michael Penix Jr. in the first round. And what are you doing? You just signed Kirk Cousins. What are you doing there? So after this performance and his performance after the 6-3 start, it's an obvious question to Coach Raheem Morris after the game.
I know you guys got the dub, but in terms of him as the starting quarterback moving forward,
he's got to play better. And, obviously you got to go back, you got to be able to look at everything. But, he wants to play better. He's got to play better. We got to find a way to get him to play better. And obviously we'll get to work tomorrow, and that's a part of our process, right? You go, you look at the tape, you review with the people that needs to be reviewed with. We get all the coordinators in the room. We'll talk with everybody. And we got to play better at the quarterback position.
So part B to that, if he can't, are you prepared to replace him with Michael Penix?
We got everybody in our roster for a reason, right? We got so much to get better at, and, those things will always be discussed. That's just the nature of the beast in football. It's just so heavily talked about it at the quarterback position because there's only one guy out there. So, for us, man, our mentality is to find a way to win the next game. And that's just the mentality that we're going to have.
So that's Falcons coach Raheem Morris. Those comments relate to Cousins last night and said, quote, I don't think that's a mystery. I think the last few weeks I would say I need to play better. Raheem says it's stating the obvious, and every week you kind of go through your process and you plan to go out there and play the best you can, and this week will be no different. I think it's got to be in play, and here's Here's the question that you would ask yourself as you go into the next two games. Now, the game the week after this weekend is going to be in Washington. We're still waiting for the time. Right now, it's still listed as a 1 o'clock game on Sunday the 29th. They play the Giants at home. There's two ways to look at that game. One, it's a terrible team. Kirk's probably going to get a lot of confidence back. He's going to look even better than he did last night. These are the two worst teams in the league, the Raiders and the Giants. And he's kind of a get-right performance. On the other hand, if you are going to go to Michael Penix and you're going to try and get into the playoffs with a rookie quarterback, I mean, that's kind of a dicey way to go into it, but, not impossible. They got to be looking around the locker room and wondering, how much confidence they have in Kirk, who at this point in his career, coming off a serious injury, an Achilles tear, may be done, may be on his way out of the league. Do you make the move now for a guy who's had an opportunity to sit and learn for a while, experienced in college like Bo Nix, and Jaden Daniels? He played 5 years as well, partly because of injuries, but he played 3 years at Indiana and then played 2 years at Washington, got them to the national championship game. So it's not like throwing in a guy who's just, green out of college after 2 years of starting or something like that. No, he's played a lot of football. Could you do that? And get his confidence up against the bad team in the Giants and start him here against Washington, or to use that game to get Kirk back on track? That's a question Raheem has to answer, but he's trying to get his team into the playoffs. That's the number one priority. And is Kirk Cousins the top guy to do that for you? Or, given the success of other rookies that we've seen this year, like Nix and like Daniels, do you make the move and put him in? That's something that I'm sure is going to be a difficult conversation. And Kirk knows the deal. He's been benched before. He was benched in 2014. Remember, Robert Griffin got hurt like in the second game. Kirk came in and had a blowout win against Jacksonville and then was just throwing interception after interception. And Jay Gruden always liked Colt McCoy. So he benched him for Colt McCoy. McCoy played, and he got hurt. They did not go back to Kirk. They went back to Robert Griffin III. And then the following year, they had enough confidence to go with Kirk as the starter, and he was a starter here for 3 years before going to Minnesota. So a lot of things to be answered there in Atlanta, and you wonder when the Falcons play here on the 29th, will it be number 18 or will it be number 9, Michael Penix Jr.? We'll see. Coming up, Gary Danielson was on the Dan Patrick Show yesterday, and I think has done a great job with college football for many years on CBS. They don't have the SEC anymore, but he's doing the Big Ten, and he's taking a look at the playoff, which will start on Friday night. On Friday night, Indiana will play at Notre Dame. And he's got a preview of that game and the rest of what we'll see this weekend as he joined Dan Patrick. We'll get to that next. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
I was thinking about Gary Danielson, who's been a college football analyst for many years on CBS, has always been in that prime 3:30 window, worked with Vern Lundquist for a long time, and did some of the greatest games that I've ever seen. Some of these Alabama games that have been played over. It seems like Alabama was on just about every weekend. And I'm not a big TV tech guy. It just seems to me the HD for CBS is even better than the others, even though the HD is so good. It's almost indistinguishable from network to network. But they have just been the premier college football site, at least for me. It fits into my window. I'm not a stay-up-late guy, so I love to watch those late afternoon games on Saturday. And I was thinking about, how a guy like that gets to carve out the career that he has had, because he's not a great college quarterback at Purdue. He was an undrafted free agent, hung around the NFL for, close to a decade, maybe a little more, with Detroit and with the Cleveland Browns, but never really was a star of any note. And he's transitioned into being a great analyst. And if you watch the Army-Navy game, that was a spectacular broadcast. He did a great job with that and has done a great job for many years. And he was on Dan Patrick's show yesterday. And if you're not up to speed now on what's going to happen this weekend, this is like a new world. We used to have, the two playoff games. Sometimes they'd be New Year's Eve, and then a week later you'd play the national championship. Well, this is going to be stretched out now over a few weeks, and it all gets started on Friday night with Indiana playing at Notre Dame, and then you got the triple header on Saturday. You could just pass out in front of the TV on Saturday afternoon and watch what we've been talking about for years, a playoff that's going to be more than 4 teams, up to 12. Some think it may get to 16. But some of these teams that you're not used to seeing in this situation, like SMU, on Saturday at noon, they'll play at Penn State. Then Clemson will play at Texas at 4 o'clock. And the night game is Tennessee at Ohio State. So when Danielson was on yesterday, Dan asked him if he saw an upset possibility, and the one he picked, I think, will go over pretty well in my house.
I think IU has a shot against Notre Dame. I know they're good, but, I've seen IU up close. We saw Notre Dame against USC. This is not a great USC football team, and that was not a great home field advantage. They played them pretty good, an interception at the last end. I like that. I think SMU has a little bit of speed that might give Penn State some problems. What I don't like about it is I thought Boise State, the charm of the basketball tournament is the little guys play in the first round. This whole bye thing of SMU and Boise State, wouldn't you have loved to see Boise State make it? And the reward is they get a home game against Alabama on the blue turf in 15-degree weather. Isn't that the way this thing should have been? Listen, I know the people that put this stuff together. They're great character people. But when it was put together, the Pac-12 was still alive. And this thing kind of got out of whack here. They'll fix it, in arrears. But it'll get better. It's way better than it was before. But I got a question for you. You're always good at throwing these at me. If you're an IU fan, would you rather have a win over Notre Dame or IU basketball makes the finals in the NCAA tournament this year?
Well, knowing the state of Indiana, I would say making it to the NCAA title game in basketball.
I was kidding the IU fans when I did a radio show that until this year, the IU football fans were not even aware that there was an ESPN ranking show all year during the season until this year. And then they said, oh, my God, they do this every week? We didn't know that. So,
well, you could dine out on beating Notre Dame for a long, long time.
That's for sure. And they've got a good team. They're a really good team. They didn't, that was the big lights against Ohio State was a little bit different for them. But, well, I think they're going to play well in this football game.
What if Ohio State loses?
Yeah. I really think early in that game, when they got their quarterback nicked early in that game, I wonder if that affected their play calling, because it just didn't make any sense to me, running right into the teeth of the Michigan football team like that. And I don't know if Howard, he got tackled early. I just wondered if that threw off the way they played. I think they're going to be ready. I don't know if you heard us late in the game. One of the things that Brad and I had talked about was at the end of the year, the flag planting. And I kind of take that flag planting 2 ways. One, it's the coach's job to say this ain't happening if we win. All right, we're going to win with class. But if I was on the other side, if I was Ohio State, all right, you beat us fair and square, but that doesn't mean you get to do that to our football field. That's a whole new game. You get the W and you get the bragging rights, but you don't plant your flag in the middle of the field. And that's why we ended up our game talking about one thing we know about Army Navy. They're not worried about at the end of the game planting flags of their school because they respect the other side too much. The only flag they're going to plant is the flag of the United States of America. And I think that's what that game was all about.
Best college player you ever saw?
The most dominating player I saw early was Calvin Johnson. I saw him as first game as a true freshman. And I went, how does anybody ever stop this guy? I was like, it's impossible.
And they're not even a passing offense at Georgia Tech.
Exactly, at Georgia Tech. And he I think he made a diving catch early, although I will have to say Larry Fitzgerald was right there as a freshman too. But I just thought he was an amazing body type. And then I think his second catch, he was running full speed, and he reached back with one hand and caught it And I couldn't believe that as well. But I think those, I heard you talking about the SEC not involved here. I think they might want to bring me back, Dan. I got there in 2006. So the year before I got there in 2005, they didn't have anybody. And I leave this year, they don't have anybody. And the 9 of the 18 years I was there, they had the Heisman Trophy winners. So they had a pretty good run with championships and Heisman guys. So I leave 1 year and all falls apart, So there was a run of them there. But I tell you, one guy who dominated like I've never seen before with the team he had, Cam Newton.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe how he played in the SEC. And I don't think there was only one other player on that team that even played NFL football.
Randy Moss stood out when
I covered him too.
When I watched Marshall, and we hope Randy's on the road to recovery.
Sure.
I just remember he caught a couple of passes over the middle and he was gone. And you can say, well, he played at Marshall, but he still stood out. He was unique. And I still don't think we've ever had a wide receiver like Randy Moss in the NFL.
That's pretty true. His top end speed, you couldn't overthrow him. They're just, you couldn't do it, So, I covered a lot of good players. I remember the days when Brady was playing at Michigan. He was so upset that, he wasn't the starter. His competitive instincts and his clutch play at Michigan, especially with the way he was being, rotated in there, was something to see. But man, did he have the chip on his shoulder, and it seems like he still has it. I just love the way he competes. I've had a great run here. The first game I ever did was Ty Detmer beating the #1 Miami Hurricanes. I got to play with Bernie Kosar, and that group of guys in Cleveland. Played with Billy Sims was my running back, and now I got to broadcast with Hall of Famers Brent and Vern and now Nessler. Been pretty good for an undrafted free agent, that's for sure.
Yeah, I was going to say, he was not a name really, and he went into the booth and he's done a great job. Now, as far as the best college football player ever seen, or at least that I saw, I got two names here that he didn't mention. One is Herschel Walker. And Herschel Walker, as a freshman, may have been at his top. He won the Heisman Trophy his junior year, and he was among the first to leave school. You were not allowed to go to the NFL in those days without having gone 4 years. I guess you could do a redshirt year, but you had to be 4 years removed from high school to go to the NFL. So he signed with the New Jersey Generals. It was before Donald Trump bought the team. Trump bought the team the following year when Herschel was already under contract, but that was a blockbuster. It's like the USFL, yeah, we're going to get some star guys, but not the biggest stars. Well, they got the biggest fish. They got Herschel to leave Georgia a year early for a big pile of cash for that time. But Georgia, with him as a freshman, I think that was the year they won the national title. He was clearly the best player in the country. They gave the Heisman Trophy to George Rogers because in those days it was considered ridiculous to give it to a freshman. He was the best player in the country. He was unbelievable. And the other one, and this is, I think, one of the best 30 for 30s ever done. It's called The Best There Never Was. It's Marcus Dupree, who was from Philadelphia, Mississippi. And Barry Switzer got him at the University of Oklahoma. And I saw him in a Texas OU game at the Cotton Bowl in Dallas in 1982, I believe. And he got like 220 yards, and he was 20 to 30 pounds overweight. It was, if you've seen the Best There Never Was special, he was in high school, man against boys. It's miraculous when you see the game film, and it's pretty clear. They did a good job of filming these games, and what has been preserved over 45 years looks really clean and good. And he's a guy who got caught up in a variety of things, going for the money. He was unhappy that he wasn't being paid at Oklahoma. Nowadays, God knows what he would make. But he went to the USFL also, hurt his knee, was out of football for a bunch of years, gained a bunch of weight, and was such a great athlete that he got himself back in shape and had a couple of pretty good years with the Rams. But he's a great what-if story. And if you ever saw Marcus Dupree play in college. I know it was brief, but if you saw him play, oh my God, he had, if he would have had the right kind of coaching, like Barry Switzer, was great at recruiting. He would bring the guys in, but I don't know how great of a coach he was. If he had the right kind of coaching, the right kind of discipline, he could have been maybe the greatest of all time. Watching Marcus Dupree play in college, limited number of games. I bet over his entire career he played maybe 15 games, maybe 20 at the most. But in those games, wow, he was something else. So was Michael Vick, by the way, and Vick back in the news. Boy, you talk about a guy who has had a bunch of lives. Michael Vick, coming out of Virginia Tech, was the number 1 pick of the draft. He was generational, before the great running quarterbacks that have come along, like, Robert Griffin III was next in succession, and now we got Jaden Daniels here and others. I mean, this was a long time ago. This was 25 years ago. He's coming out of Virginia Tech, number 1 pick, and had the talent to, it's another what-if story, because he, by his own admission, he didn't study hard enough. He didn't work hard enough at looking at game tape. But instinctually, and the skills that he had to throw a rocket, 70 yards in the air with an unbelievable left arm, and speed, agility. I mean, he was incredible on the football field, and because of his lack of preparation, for one, he also got hurt one year in Atlanta and then went to jail for running the dogfighting ring. Coming back, and there was, D'Angelo Hall, who had been a teammate of his at Virginia Tech, and I remember this. I remember being in Ashburn, and he was pushing hard for the Redskins to sign Vick when he got out of prison. And I was among those who thought, well, that's ridiculous. He's been in jail for 2 years. He can't come back and play quarterback. Maybe he's still got some skills. Maybe they can have him return kicks or something like that. But no, you don't bring Michael Vick in here. Well, they did in Philadelphia, and he was great. And it was part of the reason that they dumped off Donovan McNabb here. And if you remember that game that Donovan McNabb played against the Eagles at FedEx Field, where the Eagles had 59 points, Vick was unstoppable in that game. Unstoppable. And, to think that he comes out, number 1 pick, establishes himself as a great player with the Falcons, then it all goes up in smoke when he goes to jail, dogfighting ring, declares bankruptcy, paid back a lot of his creditors. I'll give him credit for that. People say he didn't have to do that, but he made sure he made things right with people he was in debt to. And then, to finish up his career, have a solid NFL career. He has worked as an analyst on Fox since 2017. I don't think he's great on TV, but he's pretty good. And the latest is that he is being considered to be the head coach at Norfolk State. Now, he spent 2 years playing at Virginia Tech. I don't know if he has a degree or not. I don't know if that's the case. I know to work for a state school, you have to have a degree, but this would be an HBCU, and that's Norfolk State, which is the area he grew up in, the Hampton Roads area, which Allen Iverson also came from. And if you've ever seen a film of Allen Iverson playing football, he was Vic good. He even said that his best sport was football and wanted to play football at Georgetown, but John Thompson said, no, you're not going to play football. But Michael Vick was a great football player. Made things right after paying his debt to society, after the dogfighting ring, spending 2 years in jail, coming back to play in the NFL, and now as an analyst. And I'm kind of rooting for him. I mean, off of what Dion did at both at Jackson State and now at Colorado, I would be interested in seeing what you got there. I mean, he would be the figurehead for the program. He may do some coaching. If you were a young quarterback and could run, wouldn't you want to pick up some tips from Michael Vick? I would. Norfolk State fired their coach, Dawson Odoms, last month. They were 4-8. He led the team for 4 years. They were 15-31. So, what do you got to lose? I don't think there are many top coaching candidates around the country knocking on the door at Norfolk State. And Vick is from the area, would know how to recruit that area. There's obviously a lot of talent there. I think it would make sense. And I guess, I'm just guessing here, but I guess you don't have to have a college degree to work there. I guess it's a private school, so they have different rules. That's how I understand it. If you work at a private school, you don't necessarily have to have a degree, but if you work at a state institution, you have to have one. So I would root for Michael Vick. I have been stunned at the kind of the 9 lives that he's had in the various things that he's gone through in the last 25 years plus. All right, coming up, we'll look at what is just a messy situation in college football, the transfer portal, highlighted by the absolute mess that's going on at Penn State. And we'll get to that and more as we continue. It's the Andy Poland Show, ESPN 630. So if you think you've been watching The Simpsons forever, depending on how old you are, it's possible you have. 35 years ago today, the debut of The Simpsons, and that's not even counting when it was part of the Tracy Ullman Show as a short. Every Sunday night, this has been, for people, appointment viewing, watching The Simpsons. And it all began 35 years ago today with kind of a Christmas special of a different ilk. We'll get to that later in the show, and we'll spend some time on what the NCAA, if they have any power over this, has to look at and say, we can't have this. We just can't have a transfer portal that opens and closes during the college football playoff. It makes absolutely no sense. And I was not aware of the name Bo Pribula until yesterday. I watched my share of college football. I watched Penn State play this year several times, but he's the backup quarterback there. He is not the starter, and he wants to be the starting quarterback, especially now because he knows that the starter, Drew Aller, is going to be back. He's going to be back next season for his senior year. So Bo Pribula, who went to Penn State with the hopes of being the starting quarterback there, has realized that it's not going to happen next year, and he doesn't want to wait another full year for that to happen. So he is entering the transfer portal. Now, there have been some coaches who have said, I think the Arizona State coach was the one first who said it. He said, yeah, go ahead, enter the transfer portal. I understand, but, play with us, go through the playoff with us, and then transfer. And Bo Pribula wanted to do that, but the school where he's going, and we don't know yet where he's going to wind up, they said, no. We don't want you playing in the playoff because you might get hurt, and we need you for spring practice, which starts, month and a half, 2 months after the national championship. So we need you to be healthy and ready to go. So this was Ross Tucker yesterday on the Dan Patrick Show laying out the circumstance that Bo Pribula is in.
Penn State's backup quarterback, Bo Pribula, who plays like 20 snaps a game because Penn State has this creative offensive coordinator, and Pribula is sort of like a Trace McSorley clone. He announced last night that he's going into the transfer portal and will not be with the team for the college football playoff. So now they're playing Saturday against SMU. It's the first playoff game in Penn State history. It's a home game. He grew up going to Penn State games. He's a huge Penn State fan. He loves Penn State. He's living his dream. Now, we have to assume that this probably means Drew Aller, the starter, is coming back next year, because I thought if Aller left, Pribula would start a couple years. But something is so wrong here, Dan, that you've got a kid that he's an important part of the team. However, if he stays with the team through the playoffs, he's not going to get a spot somewhere else. These other programs, they're not waiting for him, right? Like, if you're at any of these other programs, name it, Memphis or Central Michigan, I don't care, Ohio State, they need to know who their quarterback's going to be. And if Pribula can't say yes to them, they got to move on to the next kid. I just hate this. This would be like if NFL free agency was the second week of January. I hate this for Penn State. I hate this for the kid. Like, this is a major, major problem for college football.
This seems like an easy fix. Or the fact that they didn't think that this was possible. I said this last week. I was told by a source there are 2 players in the playoffs who are going to transfer during the playoffs. This is one of the players. There's going to be one more who's going to transfer from what I'm told. And this is what's happening. These schools who are looking for these players now because the transfer portal is open, they are saying to them or their representatives, we don't want you playing another game if we're going to bring you in and give you NIL. That's what's going on. And I understand both sides of this. Hey, I want to play. I'm not going to be a starting quarterback at Penn State. Yes, we're in the playoffs. They want me now. I either go now or they're going to move on to somebody else. We don't want you playing. We don't want you getting hurt. Like, if you're playing for Penn State, you might play 3 games coming up here. And that's what's amazing is you're willing to quit on your team because somebody wants you and they want you right now.
Well, and here's the thing. Like, he grew up like 20 minutes from where I am right now. This has to be eating away. This isn't like some kid from Florida that went to Penn State. Like, there's pictures of him that they show all the time, 5 years old, 8-year-old, 10-year-old at Penn State games with Penn State gear on. Like, he's living his dream. But, you know, like all of us in life, you get to the point where it's like, okay, the dream got this far and it was great to play football for Penn State, but the other dream is to actually be a starting quarterback, maybe have a chance at the pros, whatever. Can you imagine? Let's just picture we're watching SMU Penn State on Saturday. Second college football playoff game ever in the expanded format. What happens if Drew Aller gets hurt on the second play and Penn State has to put a true freshman into the game that's never played before other than garbage time? That is such a bad look. And the thing is, I know there's a window for after the playoff where guys can enter the portal, but that's these other coaches, their livelihood. We got group of 5 coaches getting fired after 2 years all over the place. The guy at Charlotte, Tom Herman, FAU, they're getting fired like this. They can't wait. Plus, the thing that people never even talk about, they are still supposed to be taking classes. Like, they are supposed to be registered for the second semester. Like, that's not even
now
you're
getting
conversation
Ross.
anymore.
Now you're getting silly. You went to Princeton.
Right, a little bit different. And he went to Princeton a while ago. I assume the Ivy League has continued to do it like they have and make academics important, but academics are nowhere here. This is all about, you know, where you can get the best opportunity, the best NIL deal, all that. That's what this is about. So that was Ross Tucker yesterday on the Dan Patrick Show. A couple of hours later, Penn State held the weekly news conference for Coach James Franklin, and he addressed what he termed to be basically an impossible situation.
Bo Prabula has been a phenomenal teammate, has been a big reason why we are where we are right now. Parents, awesome. High school coach, awesome. Being a backup quarterback's not an easy thing to do and he never approached it that way. Had so much confidence on our team based on how he went about his business and prepared like a starter again, which is something we talk about all the time, but is easier said than done. He also, in my opinion, he's a man's man. Like, came into my office, had multiple conversations with me about this process. We talked last week, had no intentions of leaving. But we got problems in college football. And I can give you my word, Bo Prabula did not want to leave our program, and he did not want to leave our program until the end of the season. But the way the portal is and the timing of it and the way our team is playing, and when you play the position of quarterback and there's only one spot and those spots are filling up, he felt like he was put in a no-win situation. And I agree with him. And number one, I hate for it. Number one, most importantly, for Bo Prabula. I don't think it's in the best interest of the student athlete. I don't think it's in the best interest of college football. But I think that's our challenge right now, right? Who is really running college football and making the best decisions for the student athletes and for our sport as a whole? Bo should not be put in this position.
And in fact, he said last night on social media, Prabula said this is an impossible situation. Now, He's not really being taken advantage of here. He did graduated in 3 years, and he's taken advantage of the best deal. He could say to schools that are looking for him to transfer to, look, I wouldn't leave you. Why are you asking me to leave my team at Penn State? They need me, especially if Drew Aller gets hurt. I got to be able to come in and play. Do you want me to be a mercenary for you? Apparently it doesn't matter. Also, discussion about this yesterday, Gary Danielson on the Dan Patrick Show as he looked at this situation.
I don't quite understand the whole mechanics of why Bo has to leave the team, why he can't enter the portal, tell the coach or team that wants them. We don't know who it is. It might be IU for all we know where he's going to go, right? It might be an important team down the line. I don't know why he can't stay on the team and say, Coach, I would never quit on you. And I'm not saying he's quitting. I understand he's in it, but I don't know why he can't finish it out as the backup quarterback. I mean, I don't see why he can't finish this game. There's been plenty of pro players who finished out their season knowing that they were going to be free agents the next year. I don't see what the big deal is. Is it the fact that he has to sign an NIL now? I would look right at the coach and go, why would you want me if I'm willing to leave the team I am on now, a team that can win the championship? You shouldn't want me if I want to do that. So I don't quite get it. I think the SMU quarterback has decided he's going to be in the portal and he's playing it. Ohio State has 7 guys in the portal that are playing in the game. I don't know why Bo has to leave. And he's a good player, by the way.
Yeah.
A very good player. But I don't know why he has to leave now. I'm sure if his parents were here, they could explain it, but I don't understand it.
You bring up a great point. If I'm transferring to your school and you want me to give up on my team who's in the playoffs
right.
and could win a couple of games, like, is that the kind of guy that you want on your team? But I was told, though, Gary, these coaches are saying we don't want you to risk getting hurt.
Yeah, too bad. Too bad. I get hurt. I mean, I could get hurt in spring ball with you. I don't get it. I hope that's the advice I'd be giving my son. But again, there's always more things. Remember early in the year, we were talking about the UNLV quarterback, quit on it, and that was more complicated than the story that we were led to believe. I mean, his head coach at Holy Cross came up and said he turned down $500,000 to go to UNLV. And then, so there's more pages all the time than we know. But I don't know. I love college football. It's funny. I got my Purdue jersey in the back. My team didn't do so good this year, but I wasn't great in college. I never really caught it. I wasn't as disciplined as I was when I got in the NFL. I wasn't as disciplined when I had a family and I knew kids were on the way. I was much more dedicated, to it. But I hope he doesn't regret this, because I've regretted the way I played. Still feel like I let a lot of my teammates down at Purdue, and I regretted that my whole life.
Well, that's that's another thing that I've talked about, and my son has taken me to task for this. He's a big college football fan, loves college basketball. And I say, just do away with the eligibility. If Bo Prabula, wants to go back on Penn State and stay for 6 years, let him do it. Let him go to the NFL when he feels like he's ready to play. And I understand he doesn't like, sitting on the bench. I understand that. But, let him stay. Let him stay for his teammates. And if it's not a good situation to transfer at the end of the year, come back and just extend the eligibility, make it another redshirt year, or whatever you want to do. Now, it's pointed out in a story in USA Today, which you probably don't even know, when Jaden Daniels left Arizona State and went to LSU. He did that, and he did it in 2022. He didn't do it January 1st of 2022. It wasn't until late March of 2022 that he left Arizona State, and he was nowhere near being talked about as the best quarterback in the country. And he went to LSU with 2 years of eligibility remaining, partly because of COVID. The COVID year didn't count. and he had back-to-back 10-win seasons, won the Heisman Trophy in 2023, and now he's here. He's probably going to win Rookie of the Year. Now, did it hurt him to go to LSU in March instead of committing in December? I don't think so. It didn't appear to. Back-to-back 10-win seasons, Heisman Trophy. Worked out pretty well for him, worked out pretty well for LSU, wouldn't you say? So I don't know why this window is when it is. It would seem to be just, one quick snap of the fingers, and we're moving the transfer portal window till after the national championship game, which is the middle of January. What's the big deal if it's delayed another month? Why is that such a big problem? Everybody's looking to get the jump. I know for spring practice, get your roster set. Maybe it's involved in recruiting, the transfer portal for players of other teams. Who do they want to go play for? So somebody's got to make a decision. The problem is there's really no governing body. The NCAA is completely useless in this. So it may continue like this for a while. But, God forbid you're a Penn State fan and you see Drew Aller get hurt early in the game and his replacement is an untested freshman when you could have had a guy who's been in the program for a few years, knows the system, has played, and could be ready to step in and still lead you to a national championship. But this is what happened to college football. They spent all their college sports in general. They spent all their time and money with lawyers fighting off the inevitable that they would have to start to pay the players. And now they pay the players and they have the transfer portal and there's no real rules. It's just a total chaos. And the Penn State situation is a highlight of that. Coming up, more from Ross Tucker on the Dan Patrick Show. Two things. Why he believes Bill Belichick will not necessarily stay at North Carolina, maybe not even coach a game there. And being based in Pennsylvania, what he believes the Philadelphia Eagles are right now, especially with all the injuries that Detroit has had, and Philadelphia will be at Northwest Field on Sunday. We'll get to that and more as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
So here's some trivia for you. Who was the first player that Bill Belichick, the new head coach at the University of North Carolina, signed in the transfer portal? Some hot quarterback, wide receiver, cornerback? No. He signed a center. Christo Kelly. Christo Kelly becomes the first commit from the portal to go to North Carolina. He has played at Holy Cross. Holy Cross is what they now call, I believe, FCS. It used to be 1AA. It's below the top line schools, which North Carolina is. And I just find this to be a little bit curious because when Bill Belichick was at Andover, he played center for whatever that's worth. So, maybe that's where he starts. He starts at center, and not a blockbuster signing, but maybe he saw something on tape that leads him to believe that Christo Kelly is going to anchor his offensive line at the University of North Carolina. Now, this is the same Bill Belichick who you may remember 25 years ago was the head coach of the New York Jets for a day. There was a succession plan in place that when Bill Parcells would give up coaching at the Jets, he later couldn't stay away. He later took the head coaching job with the Cowboys, but like many times in Parcells' career, he said, "That's it. I'm retiring. I'm done." And Belichick would be taking his place. And I don't know whether he signed a contract, but there was a contract in place. And the following day, he put a napkin on the desk of the new owner, Woody Johnson, which said, "I resign as HC of the NYJ." And I say it's not inconceivable that even with a $10 million buyout, now the $10 million is in place only until June 1st. After June 1st, the buyout drops to $1 million. I don't think it's inconceivable that before he ever coaches a game at North Carolina, remember, we don't start the NFL hiring process for about another month now. So it's still possible, even though he's snooped around. He's even snooped back at the Jets, reportedly, to see if they're interested in him coming back. And there doesn't seem to be any interest, so he's at North Carolina. But things could change, and things could change in a month. And I don't think it's inconceivable that he could write on a napkin, "I resign as HC of NC football." I think that's totally in play. This was Ross Tucker yesterday on the Dan Patrick Show. He played briefly for Bill Belichick when he was with the Patriots, and he is one who believes that Belichick in college just ain't going to work.
Knowing his personality and the way he treats people, and knowing what I think is the most important thing for college head coaches, that they're like polar opposites, right? So the key for college football coaches, head coaches, you're basically the CEO of a huge operation. And the two most important things you can do are to convince 17-year-olds and their parents that they should come play for you, and convince rich people that went to the school or are fans of the school to give you more money. That's the job, Dan. Like, that's the biggest part of the job. Belichick is definitely the best game planning schematic coach I was ever around. But you hear Brady's comments, Edelman's comments, you talk to anyone that's ever played, and I know people are going to reply in the comments, you only played 2 games for him. Yeah, I know I only played 2 games. I was there for parts of 2 seasons. I know what he's like. I know his personality. It's 100% negative reinforcement. The first thing they do at 8 a.m. team meeting is show the 5 worst plays from the day before. No one I know or has spoken with him, Dan, can picture him being in a living room recruiting or talking to donors and trying to get money. Nobody can picture that. And maybe they can have success without that. Maybe he can hire some people that can do that part of it. I'll also say this, looking at the buyout, Dan, I firmly believe, and maybe I'll be wrong, and maybe we won't get a chance to see it. I firmly believe that as soon as he got an NFL opportunity or gets an NFL opportunity, I think he would leave the next day. I think he would leave the next day, even if I think the initial buyout's $10 million. If somebody decides in January that they want Belichick, I think he'd be gone. Certainly next year, if someone gets fired, I think he'd much, much rather be in the NFL.
Why is the buyout $1 million?
Because he wanted it that way.
But
North Carolina.
But the optics are terrible.
It's a great point. It's a great point. Guess what? He doesn't care about the optics, just like I don't really believe he cares that much. Like, it would be a bad look for him if the Jaguars offered him the job and in January he leaves UNC. I just don't think he cares that much. I think he'd say, listen, like, I'm sorry, but I have a better opportunity, or I want to take this. I don't think he would care that much about what that means for North Carolina. On some level, I feel like North Carolina, Dan, is getting already what they wanted out of this. Everybody's talking about them. They were able to reel in the big fish. They're getting relevancy. North Carolina is already getting a lot of publicity and a lot of branding out of this. I don't know. Obviously, they wouldn't be happy if he left. But, I mean, does anybody really think he'll be there for 3 to 5 years? I don't, unless no NFL team wants him. And maybe he'll stay because I'll give him credit for this. I never thought he would do this. He must really love coaching football. I personally thought he wanted to continue to coach in the NFL to break down Shula's record. The 2 huge positives about Bill: unbelievable schematically and game planning, and he clearly really, really loves it, because there's no other explanation for him to take this North Carolina job.
And again, I'm 100% aligned with what Ross Tucker says there about the possibility that he would leave before ever coaching a game at North Carolina. And part of it is the media persona that he's had, well, pre-working in the media. He's a little bit more jovial and talkative, but having done this before, a younger man for sure, but he did this. It wasn't exactly the same because he left one NFL team to go to another, but, a day after a news conference where he's introduced as the new coach, he resigns, and then he winds up in New England, and I don't think there is at that time, because New England was like a nowhereville. Parcells had taken them to the Super Bowl a few years before. Pete Carroll had come in and had done an okay job, but wasn't a long-term answer there. And for whatever reason, people thought at the time Bob Kraft wanted Bill Belichick. And you go, well, why? You know, he basically he didn't do well at Cleveland, but in retrospect, given what they were up against, you know, including the moving of the team, which is really where they cratered the last year that he coached there. He didn't go with the team when they went from Cleveland to Baltimore, which would have been a really cool thing since he grew up in Annapolis. You know, think about what the Ravens would have been. Not that they were bad; they won a Super Bowl. But, you know, with Belichick, who knows? Who knows what would have happened over those years in Baltimore? It would have seemed like a perfect fit. He grew up in basically, you know, just a relative few miles away. But people were wondering, well, what do they want with this guy? And people weren't as focused on what he said. It's just, okay, you know, and they had to give up compensation to get him. Some of it was compensation, actually, that Kraft had gotten from the Jets when they signed Parcells. So it's just basically, you know, sending back the same thing. But, you know, you could see it. I could certainly see it where he resigns as head coach at North Carolina before ever coaching a game. And he's introduced as the head coach, let's say, Jacksonville. And they go, Bill, what happened? I thought you were committed to well, you know, things change, you know, and we're just moving on here. We're moving on. We're moving on to our first game. Next question. You know, that could easily happen. That's totally in play. And as insane as it sounds, the fact that he's done it before and the fact that he is who he is at the age of 72, and Tucker's right, he doesn't care what you say or what you think. He just wants to coach, and he wants to coach, I believe, in the NFL, and he took this opportunity here. And, you know, there's an old saying, especially in the radio business, it's easier to get a job if you have a job, and maybe if he has a coaching job, that makes him more attractive to NFL teams. I don't know, but I'll be surprised. Not that it won't necessarily happen, but I'll be surprised if I turn on the TV in August or September and there's a North Carolina game and there's Bill Belichick on the sidelines with a cutoff sleeved hoodie, even in August, watching North Carolina from the sidelines as he coaches there. I still think that there's a possibility he leaves before ever coaching a game. All right, Tucker is based in the Pennsylvania suburbs, the suburbs of Philadelphia, well, maybe it's even Harrisburg, maybe it's outside of Philly, but he spends a lot of time on the Eagles, and I think he does their preseason games on TV and really connected to the franchise. And with the Eagles coming to town on Sunday, this is his preview of what we're going to see, and he says the best team in the NFL.
I think they're pretty clearly the most talented roster in the NFL. I think they're the best team right now in the NFL. You know, the thing I said on social media, this thing I do for the for Eagles fans, I hope they appreciate the offensive line. That is not normal, what they're doing. Then their last drive was 10.5 minutes.
Yeah.
10.5 minutes. The Steelers had 2 possessions and 11 plays in the second half. Never heard of that in my life. They haven't given up more than 13 points. The defense, and there was a fumble return against the Jags. The defense has not given up more than 20 points since the bye. It's statistically the best defense since the bye, which was week 5. Their receivers are absurd. We saw that with Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown yesterday. You know about Saquon. The only real question mark is Hurts. When he plays at that level like he did yesterday, good luck, right? Like, to beat them, you're going to have to force Hurts to beat you, and he's going to have a bad game. It's like, you know, force the other team to shoot threes or whatever in hoops, and they have an off night and they're missing them. That's your only shot right now against the Eagles. Stop the run, force Hurts to make plays in the passing game, hope that he has a bad game and you win.
And good luck with that, Commanders, because one of their biggest weaknesses this year has been stopping the run. And also looks like they're not going to have Jeremy Chin in the secondary, so this looks like a really bad matchup for them. I'm surprised the line is only 3.5. I thought it would be like 6.5. I'm surprised about that. But, you know, Washington barely escaping New Orleans and Philadelphia looking like a juggernaut last week against Pittsburgh, a really good team. That's a tough combination. And Saquon, you know, they held Saquon for a little while in the first game in Philadelphia, and then he exploded in the fourth quarter. So this is going to be a really tough matchup for them on Sunday. And I think if you're looking at things realistically, they're going to be in the playoff, but as the last seed in the NFC. I mean, I think they could conceivably win, both games at the end of the season against Atlanta here and Dallas on the road, which would give them 11 wins. And they're the only team in the NFL that hasn't won 11 games since they won the Super Bowl in the 91 season. But it may not be good enough to get them up the ladder, and may have to, it looks like now the way things are stacking up, that Philadelphia will get the number 1 seed, and Detroit, which is sliding. And, it could be a game against Minnesota, although Minnesota could win the division. I mean, there's all kinds of things in play here. But, that could be a possibility that they would go play in Minnesota in the opening wild card game. You heard about what happened in San Francisco, obviously, with Devondre Campbell, where he refused to go in the game last week against the Rams in that Thursday night game, and they have finally washed their hands of him. The 49ers announced last night in a statement from John Lynch that they are imposing a 3-game suspension, meaning he doesn't get his money. It's like $330,000, and that's it for him. He's gone. But what didn't get as much attention, and probably because nobody realized it in the game, this was something that people actually saw. They saw him walking off the field in the third quarter, and they asked Kyle Shanahan what happened after the game, and Shanahan said, "Oh yeah, he refused to go in the game." So it became a much bigger story. The Ravens had a similar situation. Deontay Johnson. Now, he hasn't been much of a factor for them as a wide receiver. They traded for him earlier this season from Carolina. He refused to go into a game against Philadelphia. He was suspended last week. And last night, the Ravens put out a statement. "We have mutually agreed with Deontay Johnson to excuse him from the team activities from this week," meaning that I guess he's off the practice squad. I think that's the way that would go. And so either he's being basically, sat down for the rest of the season. I guess they can use the suspension with him as well. Or, will they release him? I don't know exactly how that works. Because you excuse him from the practice squad, does that mean he's free to go someplace else? There are teams that are so desperate for wide receiver help now that actually they might do it. But there was that case as well. All right, that is a wrap for me. Bram is coming up next, and I will see you back here tomorrow morning at 9 a.m.